Hi there, Martin Popoff here. Welcome back to Overkill Reviews, our weekly metal review show. Having a kind of a lackadaisical summer. I'm not crazy busy. Working right now on the follow-up to Where Eagles Dare, Iron Maiden in the 80s. So it'll be a second book called Holy Smoke, Iron Maiden in the 90s. Just a reminder to check out our Patreon if you want to subscribe to help us keep doing what we're doing. So yeah, we've got an interesting one, a complicated one for you this week. But first of all, take a listen to this. So that was Rock Steady, of course, first single. There's actually 2 videos from this album already. The album, of course, is Michael Schenker Fest Revelation, out now on Nuclear Blast. Now, if you don't know who Michael Schenker is, before we get into the album, here's a little bit about the guy. It's a complicated situation. Michael Schenker started essentially with UFO Phenomenon. He was on all the classic UFO albums. He goes solo in 1980 with the Michael Schenker Group. So here he's got a great album called the Michael Schenker Group. The next one's called MSG, Assault Attack. Now there are different singers all along. So he's a solo artist at this point. He's the blonde bomber from Germany. He's this great guitarist, you know, melodic. He's got a little bit of classical to him. Very interesting guy. But, you know, he's got some problems with drugs and alcohol, and he's a little bit unbalanced, and he's a little hard to work with through the 80s. So he has this patchy career. He eventually comes back in the 90s. Things are going okay. I mean, these are not big records that sell a lot, but he's definitely proving himself as an incredibly creative and excellent artist, well-loved in the metal underground. But flash forward, what we end up having eventually is this idea of Michael Schenker Fest. So what we're going to be talking about here is the second album from this Michael Schenker Fest concept. And what it is essentially Michael. It's an 8-man band at this point. So it's Michael gathering up all the classic vocalists from his solo career, along with Chris Glenn. There's Simon Phillips, there's Bodo Schop. But basically the big deal with what we're hearing here and why this isn't exactly called Michael Schenker Group, but this odd kind of awkward Michael Schenker Fest, is we've got Gary Barden, the first classic singer. He's on the first 2 and a later one, Built to Destroy. We've got Graham Bonnet on board. He's on my favorite, Assault Attack. Then we've got Robin McCauley. He comes in the Michael Schenker kind of corporate hairband years. And we've got Doogie White, kind of like a later utility man, great singer. His big claim to fame is he was part of Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. So there you go. That's what Michael Schenker Fest is. Now let's get into the album. What I love about this record, first of all, the last record was amazing, and what people talk about even more than the record is how incredible this tour is, or this band as a touring unit. I saw them here in Toronto about a year ago, and they just killed it. I mean, it was like a 2.5, 3-hour show, no backup band, and all these singers who are, you know, essentially old guys. Graham Bonnet is actually 71 years old, and he's just killing it, but they're all up there singing. You know, everybody's a little advanced in years. We know the vocalists are kind of the problem, but so the big thing with this record that is so cool about it, the big feature, is you have these 4 great vocalists all over the place singing. Now, a bunch of the songs are just dedicated to one singer, so he's doing the whole thing, and it's more of a band effort. But there are 3 or 4 songs on here where all the singers are in there dovetailing like they do live. You know, when they're up there singing UFO songs or whatnot, there's guys coming back and forth, coming in. It's a pretty unique concept, and it would be cool if more of this happens. Yeah, what I love about it is you get to hear all these singers. You get to hear Graham, who kind of had that old guy image even early when he was like, you know, the guy with short hair and glasses and rainbow, and then Michael Schenker. So he's there just doing that heavy, shouty voice. You've got Robin McCauley and Doogie, who are like the singing technicians. They're the guys kind of able to do everything effortlessly. And then you've got Gary Barden, who's like the swashbuckling cowboy dude. And he's got you always wonder if he's going to be a little out of tune or whatever, but he's got kind of the most interesting voice, him and Graham, I suppose. So you get all these great singers. And then, of course, what you also have that's great about this record is Michael Schenker's guitar playing. Like I always say that, you know, he's a guy, he's one of these sort of genius savants in a way that doesn't care about lyrics, doesn't listen to a lot of outside music. He kind of just digs in and does his own thing. And he's not a shredding solo guy particularly. He loves to service the songs. So these songs, you get a real variety of kind of a hair metal sound, a power metal sound, a classic rock sound, just very interesting arcane sorts of melodies. So there you go. I mean, there's some of the positives about this record. Okay, so what is there that I don't like about this Revelation record? There are a couple of things. I would say one thing I'm not crazy about is there's a little too much double bass drum songs on it. And they're not particularly fast double bass drum songs. They're not shredding or what we used to call in the old days OTT songs, but it gives a sort of a rigidity to the songs, and I think there's 2 or 3, maybe 4 that have double bass on them. It's hard to tell. There's a little bit of a, there's 2 drummers on this. Simon Phillips, this crazy cool guy. He was like the Kid Wonder when he came in on Judas Priest, Sin After Sin, but he was also the drummer on the first Michael Schenker Group album, probably the most classic that people love. I personally love Assault Attack, but so he's got his pedigree in there. But there are 2 different drummers, one bass player, as I was saying, Chris Glenn, who is also in the classic lineup. So yeah, the double bass drums, a little bit too much of that, and a little bit too much of shuffle. There's 2 or 3 shuffly songs. Not crazy when Michael Schenker Group goes into shuffle. Probably the last thing I'm not crazy about is the production. Now, normally I would complain about production that's too desktop metal, as Andy Sneap would say. That sounds like too processed. This is the other end. It sounds very unprocessed, which is kind of cool, but there's just nothing kind of super powerful or tight about the drumming. And oddly, I would say it's the drums and the vocals that seem to be, brought up in the mix even above the guitars. The guitars just have this kind of, they just kind of sit in there. There's not much effects on them. They just kind of, they're not, you would think from a guitarist guy that the guitars would be a little bit more molten and up in the mix. So yeah, the production, I love my analog productions, don't get me wrong, and it's not a big negative, but I just found it a little bit too light. This record was recorded in California and in Germany. Michael's working with Michael Voss, who he's worked with on a lot of stuff. Cool dude. Came from an old obscure German band called Mad Max. Everything sounds uniform. It doesn't sound like it's separated by 6,000 miles or whatever that is, 5,000 miles. But yeah, I just find it a little bit like that. Rating-wise, I do love this album. I think I am going to go 4 out of 5 skulls on this record. There is so much entertaining on this album. It's long. You hear those vocalists come in and out. There's a lot of variety. The lyrics are pretty cool. Minor quibbles on it. Great record. Great follow-up to the first one. Couple shout-outs in terms of records that are coming out right about now. There's a new Borknagar album. I mean, I always had a soft spot for these guys. Back in our magazines days, Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, we interviewed these guys all the time. Just a cool, progressive, death metal-y kind of band. Interesting, Hell Yeah has an album out called Welcome Home, and apparently, Vinnie Paul, before he tragically passed away, I mean, a lot of the drum tracks got recorded on this. And of course, the big one is a new Opeth album. That's going to be very, very interesting. Opeth is obviously one of our cool cutting-edge metal bands that everybody gets pretty excited about. So yeah, there's 3 pretty varied, pretty interesting new releases coming out right about now. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts on this Michael Schenker Fest album, Revelation. Thanks again for watching. We will see you again next time.
Spotlight! I can feel the temperature rising.